The Storm Prediction Center has 13.5 million Americans under a severe risk right now. A 993 millibar tropical system is showing up on computer models targeting South Florida. 5 to 6 inches of rain is already in the ensemble models for Columbia and Atlanta this week. Stay with me at the 4-minute mark. I show you the tropical threat that is turning heads. Make it to the end. I have drought relief numbers that will genuinely surprise you. I want to be honest, when I pulled up today's models, I had to look twice. This is one of the strangest late May weather setups I've seen in a very long time. A pattern that is both calmer than average and sneakier than average at the exact same time. Burn this into your memory. Memorial Day calmer does not mean quiet, not by a long shot. Let's start with what the Storm Prediction Center is saying for today, Sunday, May 24th. A marginal risk of severe weather covers 190,433 square miles and 13.5 million people today. That marginal risk splits into 2 zones, one in the plains and one in the southeast. For the southeast zone, Atlanta, Montgomery, Columbus, Georgia, and Tallahassee are all included. An area of mid-level spin is lifting northeast from southern Alabama into Georgia today. That spin feature will trigger organized linear storm clusters capable of 50 to 65 miles per hour gusts. Water-loaded downdrafts in those clusters will be the primary hazard through early evening today. Think about Dorothy, a retired teacher in Atlanta. Today's storm timing matters for her plans. Dorothy has her outdoor event wrapped up before 4 p.m. today. That is exactly the smart call. Meanwhile, the plains zone stretches from Nebraska and Iowa all the way to Minnesota and South Dakota. Sioux Falls, South Dakota is ground zero for today's plains severe threat peak 5 to 9 p.m. Large hail is the primary hazard across Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, and South Dakota this afternoon. Large to very large hail golf ball size is possible if storms fire in this environment. The catch is the models are not fully confident storms will even fire in the plains zone today. Heights are rising and the lifting mechanism is weak, so confidence is low in storm development. If storms do fire, though, they will be significant. That is what makes this setup sneaky. Drop your city and state in the comments. I come back tonight with your specific breakdown. Nebraska, Iowa, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, wherever you are, I want your city below tonight. Let me walk you through today's timing because knowing your window is everything today. By noon today, rounds of showers and storms continue across the Ohio Valley and southeast. By 2 to 4 p.m. today, afternoon heating fire storms across Georgia, Alabama, and into Tennessee. By 5 to 9 p.m. today, the plains severe window opens for Sioux Falls, Omaha, and Lincoln. By 9 p.m. to midnight, activity weakens across the plains, but southeast storms continue overnight. By early Monday morning, widespread showers are already spreading ahead of Memorial Day. Here's the key message for Memorial Day. The SPC has posted no formal severe risk. Day 2 Memorial Day shows no risk areas at all. A high-amplitude ridge is building in. That ridge weakens upper-level winds and takes away the fuel for organized severe weather. The good news is Memorial Day starts mostly quiet to begin the morning across the country. But there is still a widespread general thunderstorm risk. No formal risk does not mean no storms. I am personally monitoring a slightly higher risk of storm activity across the southeast Monday afternoon. By Memorial Day afternoon, pop-up storms are possible across Alabama, Georgia, and the Deep South. If you have outdoor plans on Monday, morning is your safest window. Afternoon gets dicier. Have a radar app ready and a backup plan if you hear thunder. Go indoors, no exceptions. And then Tuesday, May 26th is where an interesting signal on the models catches my attention. Both the European and American models are hinting at a slight risk for parts of West Texas Tuesday. The primary threats models are suggesting for Tuesday are damaging winds and large hail. An isolated tornado in West Texas on Tuesday is also something forecasters will be watching. If you are traveling back from Memorial Day plans Tuesday, stay heads up across West Texas. Think about Earl, a retired rancher near Odessa. Texas Tuesday is his most dangerous travel day. Earl is mapping his route around West Texas storm activity before noon Tuesday. Smart move. Now here is the part of this forecast I personally kept coming back to all morning. The week after Memorial Day is full of what forecasters call mesoscale severe weather days. Mesoscale means pop-up storms in unpredictable locations, not organized outbreak events. In plain terms, storms can fire in areas rated 0 risk just hours before they develop. We had a marginal risk yesterday that produced 1.5 inch diameter hail out of nowhere. That is the nature of this pattern, calm overall, but sneak attack storms possible every day. Remember Dorothy in Atlanta I mentioned at the start? She texted me this morning. Dorothy said 3 inches of rain fell at her house in just the last 24 hours alone. She said the ground is already soaked and her neighbor's yard flooded again overnight. That is the real-world proof of what happens when this kind of pattern locks in for days. Tell me your city below and I will personally come back with your local 7-day timeline tonight. Houston, Atlanta, Sioux Falls, Columbus, Tallahassee, every city I want in those comments. Let me explain the large storm system spinning off Oregon and California. This is key. A giant upper-level low will sit spinning off the west coast for about 3 to 4 days. That system is not expected to bring major severe weather outbreaks to the U.S. right now, but it will bring plenty of rainfall west of the Rockies, including California, Oregon, and Washington. If that system tracks far enough east, severe weather days close out May across the high plains. The high plains could see mesoscale severe weather days if that western low ejects east. I would not call for a major outbreak, but I personally think this one is worth watching. But here's the part nobody's talking about, the one to watch this week. Both computer models are now hinting at tropical development in the Western Caribbean by late May. The American model is showing a 993 millibar tropical system targeting South Florida by late May. A 993 millibar low would be a named tropical storm that would be Arthur for the 2026 season. Now, I want to be straight, the European model is much less aggressive on this development. But the GFS shows this Caribbean energy crossing Cuba and hitting the Florida Keys by late May. Even the European model shows a large surge of moisture getting slung into the Gulf. 2-inch precipitable water values aimed at Florida, meaning the atmosphere is supersaturated. Whether or not this develops tropically, the moisture surge could bring significant flooding. Think about Frank, a retired contractor in Miami end of May, is when he watches the tropics. Frank knows a 993 millibar system near the Keys could dump a week's worth of rain in one day. Frank already has his storm shutters ready and his flood insurance current. That is how you prepare. Let me give you the numbers because they matter for South Florida, the Keys, and Miami Beach. The GFS model develops the system over Cuba around May 29th and tracks it toward the Keys. The European model is not as aggressive but does show that large moisture surge into the Gulf. Both models agree on one thing: a big slug of tropical moisture is heading toward the Gulf. That moisture surge could bring heavy multi-day rainfall to South Florida, Tampa, and Naples. I personally do not think this becomes a major hurricane, but I am watching it very closely. One thing is very likely: the last days of May will be very wet across South Florida. Now let me explain why this pattern just keeps reloading, because that is the real story here. A massive ridge of high pressure is spiking all the way up into Canada and anchoring this setup. That ridge forces a consistent southwest flow riding right over the southeast at 18,000 feet. That flow is overriding a very moist environment with dew points sitting in the 60s and 70s. As long as that combination holds, daily rounds of showers and storms continue across the southeast. The Euro ensemble shows this same signature repeating through essentially the start of June. This is a summer-style pattern arriving early, driven by El Nino-like atmospheric signatures. Let me give you the full rainfall picture because these totals are ones I keep coming back to. The Euro ensemble shows 5 inches for Columbia, South Carolina over the next 14 to 15 days. Atlanta is showing the same 5-inch signal. Chattanooga is running 5.5 to 6 inches. These are 51-member ensemble averages, not one model run, the mean of all of them. To put that in perspective, Atlanta typically sees 4 inches in the entire month of May. Houston to Miami, Atlanta, Charleston, and parts of the Mid-Atlantic are looking at 1 to 3 inches. That broad 1 to 3 inch zone is drought-busting relief for areas desperately needing moisture. But here is the flip side: a 15% flash flood risk is elevated across 2 separate zones. The first elevated flash flood zone runs from New Orleans through Atlanta to the central Appalachians. The second elevated zone covers the central Ohio Valley. Watch this area through Memorial Day. 15% means a 1 in 7 chance of flash flooding within 25 miles of your location. Turn around, don't drown with soils already saturated. New rainfall has nowhere to drain quickly. Now let's talk temperatures, because this pattern creates a split that deserves some attention. Canada and the northern tier are running well above average, 15 to 20 degrees above normal. The southeast is running at or slightly below average, driven by cloud cover and constant storms. That means no scorching heat down south this week, but muggy and humid with daily storm chances. The Midwest and Northern Plains enjoy above average warmth this week, nice spring conditions. By early June, a trough over Atlantic Canada could bring a brief cool down to the northeast. Let me give you the full city breakdown so you know exactly where you stand this week. Atlanta ground zero for today's southeast marginal risk. Storm cluster threat by 2 to 4 p.m. Montgomery and Columbus, Georgia, inside the marginal risk zone. Peak storm threat this afternoon. Tallahassee, Florida, marginal risk active today, then persistent daily storm chances all week. Mobile and Birmingham, Alabama, severe potential today as MCV moves northeast through the area. Nashville and Chattanooga, Tennessee, active today, then 5 to 6 inch rainfall total builds all week. Charlotte and Raleigh, North Carolina, wet Memorial Day weekend, meaningful drought relief coming. Columbia, South Carolina, heading toward that 5-inch ensemble total. Watch creeks and low roads. Knoxville and Asheville rain continuing through the holiday weekend, mountain flooding threat real. Jackson, Mississippi flash flood risk elevated today. Heavy rain continues through Memorial Day. New Orleans and Baton Rouge flash flood risk active today. Tropical moisture surge arriving soon. Jacksonville and Orlando, Florida sea breeze storms daily, moisture surge arriving by month end. Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and the Florida Keys watch the last few days of May very closely. Tampa and Naples, that massive moisture slug arrives around May 29th to 31st. Be prepared. Houston, general storm threat today and Memorial Day, then tropical moisture surge end of May. Sioux Falls, South Dakota, ground zero for today's plains marginal risk. 5 to 9 p.m. your window. Lincoln and Omaha, Nebraska, today's marginal severe threat if storms fire. Peak window late afternoon. Des Moines, Iowa, today's conditional severe risk. Confidence low, but watch late afternoon carefully. Minneapolis and St. Paul, storms possible today evening, then calmer for Memorial Day Monday. Dallas-Fort Worth, general storm threat today, then Tuesday brings a new isolated severe threat. West Texas from Odessa to Midland to San Antonio, Tuesday's model signal puts this in the bullseye. Denver and Colorado Springs, western low spinning along the coast could eventually bring storms. Seattle and Portland, that spinning low brings meaningful rainfall to the Pacific Northwest today. Indianapolis and Louisville, wet Memorial Day weekend ahead. Ohio Valley flash flood risk continues. Pittsburgh and Columbus, Ohio, elevated flash flood risk through Memorial Day. Monitor streams closely. Kansas City and St. Louis, general storm threat today. Then quiet improves for Memorial Day. Chicago and Detroit, mostly dry Memorial Day ahead as the ridge builds and suppresses storm activity. With today's marginal risk in 2 zones, here are your action items with specific deadlines. Southeast zone wrap up outdoor activities before 2 p.m. today. 50 to 65 miles per hour gusts are possible. Plains zone vehicles undercover before 5 p.m. in Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, and South Dakota. Memorial Day morning is safest window. Have a backup plan ready for any afternoon events. South Florida, by May 29th, you want outdoor furniture secured and a flood plan confirmed. Phone alerts on full volume before you sleep overnight. Storm activity is possible this week. Share this with someone who has Memorial Day plans. A heads up from UBeat's 10 push notifications. Drop your city one more time below. I personally watch every location and respond tonight. And now the genuine good news I promised, and this one is worth pausing for a moment. The Southeast has been in a significant drought, and this 14-day pattern is about to change that. 5 to 6 inches for Columbia, Atlanta, and Chattanooga is genuine drought-busting moisture. The Mid-Atlantic, Virginia, and the Carolinas see 1 to 3 inches that is meaningful relief. This is roaring back with a vengeance for communities bone dry through most of spring this year. Back to those 3 opening numbers, 13.5 million in the marginal risk zone right now. A 993 millibar GFS tropical system and 5 to 6 inches in the Columbia and Atlanta ensemble. Those numbers are not going down. Every model run this week has been trending wetter. Dorothy in Atlanta, 3 inches in 24 hours, event wrapped before 4 p.m., alerts on full volume. Earl in Odessa has his route mapped around Tuesday's West Texas storm threat already. Frank in Miami has shutters ready and flood insurance current before that moisture surge arrives. 3 people, 3 dangers, 1 relentless pattern, 1 early El Nino prepare before it fires. Calmer than average and sneakier than average at the exact same time. That is this week's forecasts. Not here to ruin your Memorial Day, here to make sure you have a Tuesday. Drop your city one last time I come back tonight with your specific local Memorial Day breakdown. Tomorrow's update brings fresh model data on the western low and that Caribbean tropical energy. Mark my words, if that Caribbean system develops the way GFS shows, we will be talking. This pattern is just getting started. The subtropical jet says the moisture reloading is not done.